And now we're going to have Minister Amadi bring to us a wonderful presentation on the Neteru. Minister Amadi, you're on mute. Take yourself off of mute and take it away, bro.
Well, thank you. And I wanted to, send you my regards and congratulations on your anniversary.
I give thanks.
Also, congratulations, Debbie, for your award. If we don't stand for anything else, we got to stand for excellence. And so and it's good that we can acknowledge excellence when we see it. So, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm, always glad when I get the privilege to present. And so I want to present something, from my heart, which is basically what I want to do is have a conversation. I want to share some thoughts and ideas, as well as some research, so it's not all just, but it is some of my own interpretations, my own perspective on things that I want to share. And so that's why I want, when I say I want it to be a conversation, because I want to share some information which is in search of the truth. That's the purpose. And so I always like to say this, when I'm doing presentations or sermons or whatever, stuff like that, is that if anything I say doesn't resonate with your spirit, then I just invite you to file it on the shelf for future consideration. But I really do believe in exchange of ideas. My message to our people when I'm talking to people is basically just to have an open mind. Let's talk about it and share ideas. And so with that in mind, I want to also, invite you, Minister Imhotep, to, share your understandings or knowledge about any of the questions that may come up, as it relates to the Neteru. If you feel like there's something you can expand on what I'm saying, I want you to know that, you're certainly invited to do that. So
I'll try, but I'm pretty much going to keep my mouth shut.
Well, I mean, at least you had the invitation, right? Sometimes it's like, at least I was asked. At least ask me, right?
At least they asked me. That's right. Thank you.
If I don't want to do it, if I don't want to take it, fine. But at least I was asked, right? So
remind him that his mind is attached to his tongue.
Well, that's all right. Good speech, right? So, all right. So what I want to do is have people to get a working knowledge. Many of you may know some of this stuff, but I want you to have a working knowledge about the Neteru, the Neters, and their place in the role of our tradition, our African tradition. So with that being said, I'm going to share my screen, and I don't see the, you said you posted the PDF, but I don't see it in the chat.
Oh, I put it there, I believe, sir. Yes, it's there, right there.
Okay, I guess I just don't see it, but that's okay. I don't need to see it as long as everybody else can see it. Okay, so because I want you to, I tend to sometimes put a lot of knowledge, a lot of information out there. So I like to do handouts so people can look at what I'm sharing, and then later on they don't have to worry about taking notes, and then they can look at it later on, and I try to take it all in at one time. So with that being said, I am going to share my screen. All right, and so everybody see the screen. Okay, so the title of this is Neteru and Neteru and some of the Neteru, a metaphysical understanding. That's why I said it's a presentation of my perspective on things. And a lot of my background is metaphysical. I was ordained as a science of mind minister, and so I kind of come from that orientation. That our thought is creative and we can direct our thinking. So I kind of come from that kind of a background. And so I'm sharing kind of my background on this particular subject. So as we get into this, I want to talk about, so I'm starting off with this quote from this on African deep thought. So Jacob Carruthers, he says that we really don't have philosophy in, African, there's really not per se philosophy in the sense that Western philosophy is. We have what's called African deep thought, in the sense of that in other words, the reason why is because philosophy from a Western perspective is about ideas. But as we all know, that we have to speak ma'at, but we also must do ma'at. So philosophy from an African perspective is not just an idea, but also an action. So that's why we call it African deep thought as opposed to philosophy. You know, it's philosophy, but philosophy from an African perspective is different than philosophy from a Western perspective. Now, you know, you guys can ask questions or chime in, although I do have a lot and I'm gonna try to move through it. I'll pause at various levels to give you an opportunity to give your feedback or ask your questions. So I'm not going to read this whole thing here. That's why I gave you the handout. But the European way of thinking and reasoning is not universal. Sometimes we get into this, you know, it's assumed that Western thought sometimes is, you know, the universal way that most people think. But in fact, European thinking and reasoning is harmful to African people. You know, I'll probably, you know, preaching to the choir with that. Their mindset is materialistic. Why is it harmful? Because it's a materialistic, segregative, literal, and linear. This type of thought process is incompatible with the true nature of reality, which is spiritual, integrative, symbolic, circular, and holistic. So I'm saying all that to say that, you know, we have to look at our scriptures and our spiritual teachings not just from a literal perspective, but look at African thought is symbolic thought. And so if you just look at the literal meaning of things, you'll always stay at the surface. But you want to go to the deeper meanings of things, is what our ancestors did. And so they went into not only the literal meaning of things, but the metaphorical, metaphysical, esoteric. You know, we go to deeper levels because as you go deeper in your level of understanding, you can access different levels of reality. And so I want to just put that out there. So we can't just stay at a linear thinking. We got to learn how to be circular and also understand symbolic thought. And so I'm looking at the Neteru from a symbolic perspective, you know, taking more or less of a metaphysical look or perspective on them. That's not the only way to look at them, but it is a way. And so I'm sharing that way and I invite your questions. And so, so the main thing I want to focus on, or rather emphasize, is that African deep thought enhances the total person. It's about cultivating the spirit. It evolves you and brings out of you your inherent divinity. Most importantly, it teaches you how to be divine. Okay, how to be divine. And so that means that as a from an African perspective, you are not born in sin. You're not born with something wrong with you that you have to be saved from something outside of yourself. But rather, you're created out of the essence of the Creator, and so therefore you have access to all that power of the Creator, Amun-Ra. And so that's a very important distinction between African thought and, per se, Western Christian thought. And even if we wanted to practice Christianity, I always tell my Christian friends, why don't you practice it in the ways of your ancestors? That is, that you don't have to take everything literal. You know, you don't have to embrace these types of concepts like original sin and eternal damnation and all those things. Those are European concepts. And so when we understand the symbolic meaning of things, we are able then to let go of certain illogical, irrational ideas and just continue in an evolution of our understanding. All right, so I'm kind of basing, so I took an excerpt from a sermon I did entitled, it was entitled, "In the Beginning, Ra Created the Heavens and the Earth." So I talked about the creation stories, you know, that there are various creation stories. However, even though they weren't exactly the same, they basically were complementary of each other, and they reflected the evolution of thought. So everything may not be saying the same thing, but it's all moving to a continuous growth and understanding. And so that's another aspect of African thinking. And so we're called then to make everything relevant to what we're doing today. So just like our ancestors, they created, we can create as well, but we're going to all do it as long as we're doing it in the tradition of the way our Africans people have always done it. So I'm going to be sharing with you a creation story, and the and various the Neteru or the Neters that are revealed in this particular creation story. Perhaps I'll get a chance to do a part 2, in which I'll be able to go into more of the Neter, but I want to just start off by at least introducing everyone who may not know about the Neters that we come to know based on the creation story, the Kemetic ancient Egyptian creation stories, and the main one people usually go with is the Heliopolis creation story. That's the city of the sun. I think it was called On, but it's the city of the sun, Heliopolis. I think Heliopolis is a Greek word. All right, so in order to tell our own story, we must know about the historical and cultural narratives of our ancestors. The most ancient of creation stories begins with the creator, Ra, rising out of the waters of noon and then proceeding to project or speak into existence all created forms. And so we hear this all the time, quoted on Sunday services where they're talking about, on the reading on the creation, of Ra. And so, and then again, in the pyramid text, it says, Hail Atum Ra, Hail Keperah, he who becomes from himself. And so I draw a line, since we're divine beings and we're really cultivating our divinity, when we become self-knowing of who we are and confidently declare the truth about ourselves, we become creators of our own experiences as divinities in our own right. So we're not just supposed to look at the divinities and the deities as outside of ourselves, but these are the attributes that are inside of us waiting to be accessed. And one way to access them is through knowing their names. When you know, because name represents nature. And so if you want it so much, when you know the name of something, and you can call it the right way, then that allows you to connect with it. So that's part of why we want to know the Neters, so that we can connect with the power that they represent. So just briefly, so any questions so far? Okay, so just briefly, I'm going to go briefly over the creation story. Like I said, you have the handout, so you'll be able to go through all this stuff later on. But this is the Heliopolis creation story. So it begins with Atum. Well, one, there's the formless waters of noon. Atum longs to express his creativity in an act of self-definition. Atum begins to separate from the noon as Keperah, the scarab, the becoming. So this is the beetle right there. That is the symbol of Keperah. And and so this is Atum, also Keperah, also Ra. So remember, so this is when you understand, like I said, circular thinking as opposed to linear thinking. So the creator is all of these ideas. Keperah, the one who comes forth, Ra, the one who shines in his power, and Atum, the fullness and completion of an idea. All right, and so the creator Ra then brings forth Shu and Tefnut. That's the first two created beings. By the act of self-generation, he brings forth his first children, Shu and Tefnut. Shu is air and Tefnut is moisture. I'll get into what I interpret the significance of that to be. So then they in turn come together, Shu and Tefnut, and they produce Nut and Geb. Nut is heaven and Geb is earth. All right? And so now Nut and Geb, in their union, they produce what's considered to be the first human beings on the earth, which is they got Osiris here, but we say Asar. Osiris is the Greek word. We like to stick, we like to kind of shy away from all that Greek and talk about our own, say things in our own words. We name ourselves, right? So Asar, Aset, and the Set and Nephthys. Those were the offspring of Nut and Geb. There's also Horus or Heru in many of the stories. And there's Heru the elder, Heru but we're mostly familiar with Heru, the son of Asar and Aset. But the same qualities that exist for Heru, the elder, exist for Heru. In other words, these are evolving understandings. And so our people were, over thousands of years, they were fine-tuning their understandings about nature. And so they were strong enough and brave enough to make adjustments as they were evolving in their understanding. So this is the basic creation story. You have Ra, you have Shu and Tefnut, you have Nut and Geb, and then you have Asar, Aset, Set, and Nephthys, and then the child of Asar and Aset, which is Heru. So you guys probably all knew that, but I wanted to let you know that's the Heliopolis creation story. So now you know where it's coming from. All of them probably had all those elements. So I want to now share a little bit from.
Can I add something?
Yes, please add something.
So
yes.
In the Bible, Heliopolis is on.
On, right. That's right.
O-N, and the African name is Anu. The African.
Oh, cool. Thank you. That's what I'm talking about.
Name
right. That's what I'm talking about. Right there.
Is Anu.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. See, we always got to be able to share our knowledge with each other and add to, so we can all have a more complete picture. I don't want to be right. I want to be correct. And so I'm always willing. I always appreciate when I can get a little bit more correction, get a little bit more accurate.
That's beautiful, Minister Amadi. I like that phrase. I'm going to have to borrow that one.
That's okay. Once you put it out there, I always say it belongs to the universe. Right? Any knowledge that goes out there, it becomes accessible. So, all right. So from African philosophy, the Pharaonic period by Theophile Obanga, I want to read a little bit about what he has to say about this spirituality, the Neters and Unter. So he says, God, Unter, Nectar. Originally, the word meant the awakening of higher consciousness within the primordial essence. Now he says N-W-N, spelled. A lot of these things are also spelled differently. So we say the Nun, N-U-N, right? And so the image of a God who reveals himself in Nun. Now he reveals himself in Nun. In other words, he comes out of the Nun, which is the one aspect of the Aduad. The Aduad it means 8. So it means the 8 primordial deities out of which the creator emerged, the Aduad. And those deities were the Nun, which is the primordial waters. Then the next one is darkness, which is called Hay and Hayhat. Nun is Nun and Nunet, because another thing I want to point out is that in African, there's always a balance in African understandings, so that there's always a male counterpart and a female counterpart. And so they always come together as a package, because the male and female always balance each other, and they understand that one cannot exist without the other. And so in these original primordial deities, you have Nun and Nunet, which is the primordial waters. You have Hay and Hayhet, which is eternity. You have darkness, which is Kuk and Kuket. And you have mystery, which is Amun and Amunet. And so out of this primordial essence emerges the creator, Ra. This is called pre-creation. So this was done for the purpose of acting, doing, creating, guiding humanity and the entire world And this is symptomatic of metaphysical uncertainty. So in other words, we can't know it all with our human comprehension, but are we able to find peace in uncertainty? Are we able to define ourselves and stand in the power of who we are, even though we may not have all the answers? I don't know everything, but what I know, I know. And so I stand on that which I know as I'm continuing to evolve and grow. That's what the Creator did. It became aware of itself, and then it stood forth and proclaimed that which it wanted to experience, which is the world of creation. All right. So the word Unter It means the sacred. It just means the sacred essence. Has a spiritual evolutionary meaning. Created beings extend the Creator's creation daily, as the sun is ceaselessly born and reborn from its own energy. So that's why the sun is a metaphor for the continuous process of evolving and creation that happens every day. And so every day you have beginning, middle, end, hibernation, and then beginning again the next morning. And so the sun represents this journey that we all are on, by which we are continuously coming forth as Kepera. All right. So, and so going on to his readings. So what is involved is the infinite multiplication of primal energy emergent from creative matter. This is a philosophy that exalts life in the name of cosmic order Ma'at. Okay, so people understand that? Any questions on that one? Does that make sense? What I just said, read, as far as the Agduad, the primordial waters, is what everything emerged out of? Yes.
I have a question. Just as a point of clarity,
please.
I'm fairly new to this. And I've heard that these stories, these Kemetic or Egyptian stories, are not actual events, that they are parables or allegories or to explain spiritual things.
Yes.
Am I correct? Is that correct?
Well, you know, see, this is the thing about what they so-called myths.
Right.
It's true, but it's not true. Okay, it's true in terms of the eternal principle that is true, right, but all the details and facts of it may not be exactly historically true. And so some people believe that Asar, Aset, Set, and Nephthys walked the earth, and he's legendary first pharaoh or king of ancient Kemet. But when you go to a symbolic understanding, you're able to say, well, it doesn't have to, the literal historical fact of the matter is not that important, right, because it's really subordinate to the truth principle that it represents. And so I'm not going to say it's not true. I'm not going to say it's not historically true, but I do know that we look at these stories from a symbolic perspective, because we want to go deep into the eternal meanings that are in it, and not just be caught up in a factual historical account that looks at just the literal, right, linear interpretation. We'll let the Europeans do that.
Can I interject?
Please add to that.
Something?
Yes.
So this is the way, you know, because there are a lot of stories, and anything that you hear, you shouldn't believe it, but you shouldn't disbelieve it either.
There you go.
I know that sounds paradoxical, but when you're looking at scriptures or these ancient teachings, you have to look at it from a historical point of view, a cosmological point of view, a symbolic, metaphysical point of view, a mythological, allegorical point of view, an anatomical point of view, and an anagonical point of view, which has to do with ascension. So on one level, there is a history to it. On another level, they're talking about something that's a cosmological phenomena. On another level, it's symbolic, as Minister Amadi is telling us. There's a mythological, allegorical part to it. And then there's something that actually deals with the human body. If you look at the way that Keper is written, it's a dung beetle. And if you look at the dung beetle and compare it to an overview of the human skull, they're almost identical. And the word Keper means to bring into being. And all things come into being through the mind first. You know, so in in the Memphite theology or any of these others, there's that essence, the ocean, the primordial oceans of noon, and then there's that cosmic intelligence, recognizing itself and bringing everything into being, bringing it in through being through vibration, and and so we that grew up in a Christian tradition talks about in the beginning was the Word, that was the vibration, and then okay, I'm gonna stop talking. All right, you guys get what I mean.
Just as a point of clarity for myself,
Sure.
my mindset is like this: that in the beginning, we weren't there. Okay, nobody witnessed the beginning. And so what I like about these Neteru,
Neteru just that just means plural. That just means plural.
These are various. They're referred to as deities, but it's what the ancient Africans used to explain the unexplainable. In a sense.
And Neter, just singular, and Neteru, as Minister Amadi said, is plural, has to do with, it doesn't mean a god or a goddess. It means a principle. So as he was explaining, it's the principle, Shu is the principle of air. Tefnut or Tefnuti is the principle of moisture. Geb is the principle of earth. All of these things are contained within the human body. Ra is fire. The primordial ocean. Now science is telling us about, everything in the universe is coming out of blackness. Black energy, so. And that's akin to that noon. So modern science is just coming back to the notion that our ancestors had millennia ago, because they were at a higher consciousness when they were able to talk about these things. We here are a low grade consciousness just coming back into being. Yeah. I hope I answered that.
Yes, you did. Ashe. So we're gonna go on.
Please. I'm
just
sorry.
Kind of reflect on it. Sometimes, if you just open your heart up, a lot of things will be revealed to you. I know when I first came into this teachings, I was just kind of like associate myself, and just in the association, you're learning. So all of this stuff, you're gonna learn it. It's gonna come. It's just a matter of just be open and discriminate. But see, the difference between an African-centered approach is that we don't tell you to ever cut off your mind. We don't tell you to ever cut off your critical thinking. We tell you to continue to examine it and to look at it and see what your heart tells you about it and proceed accordingly. So you just trust in that, and you're gonna learn it all and more. Because I remember when I first came into this teachings, which was in 2013, I was already a metaphysical minister. I had a lot of stuff already. I already had been a pastor and everything. But then, this was something new that opened me up to something different, and then after about a year of sitting back, I got asked to start teaching. So these kind of things happen. You're learning more than you think. And you're gonna find yourself, teaching people about this stuff pretty soon. So,
may I say just one more thing, Minister Amadi?
Sure.
You know what? There's also a left brain teaching and a right brain teaching.
Yes. Right.
And so, some things are intuitive. Some things are, as you explained, searching within yourself. And then some things are more on the logical, linear, trajectory to understand.
Right. And so our ancestors always kept that balance. And that's why they always had the male and female, because they knew that it was a balance. So moving on then, so now I want to read a little bit. I want to read from Nile Valley Contributions. I'm kind of giving a little background first in terms of just some scholarly, background. And then I'm going to get into, more the Neters, but I wanted to just set the stage. So from Nile Valley Contributions, Anthony Browder talks about the Neters. He says the universe was viewed as the omnipotent expression of one great supreme being, which manifests itself within all of the functions and principles that govern the universe and maintain balance and harmony. These facets of the one supreme God were referred to collectively as Neteru. That's the plural of the Neter, and individually as Neter. And you see there's different spellings. Like I said, you know, like Unter, Neter, Neter. So there's a lot of different variations. So we have to be able to understand that we're talking about the same thing, even though we may use different words. Each manifestation of a nectar was associated with a divine aspect of God and was represented by a specific symbol. As time passed, the Neteru became known as forces of nature. I want you to key into this particular idea, a force of nature. When you think about Unter, you're talking about nature without the vowels. Unter basically is the essence, the essential essence of reality, truth. It's an essence. And so it's all about the nature, the divine nature. And so these various Neteru were basically aspects or forces of nature. For example, the God of water, the God of air, the God of earth. And so as Brother Imhotep just said, Minister Imhotep, you know, we don't really speak of God in the Western way people kind of think of, well, this is God. You know, we don't mean it like that. We don't mean it like, I even call it God with a small g, because it's not, we're not talking about the creator, we're talking about aspects of the creator. So the Europeans called it polytheism, but it's not polytheism. It's still just one creator, but our ancestors went deep. They want to explore this creative principle and learn of its various aspects and functions and principles, so they could channel all the various energy that comes forth from the source. So you have to have a language in order to access certain things and do certain things. You have to have a language. If you learn a particular skill or a certain trade, you're going to learn the language of that trade, because you're not able to function, you know, within it unless you have certain words that help you distinguish one thing from the other. So that's what the Neters are. They're just giving you a language so that you can now identify the various energies and powers that are available to you. And why? So that you can access them. And how are you going to access them? Because you know their names. You know their names, you know their functions, and now you can start looking out for them. And you can start calling them into being or action into your life. Okay, so animals were usually selected to represent the qualities of a specific nature. Why? Because the nature of an animal was unique to that particular creature and remained constant over years. And so that's another quality of our ancestors. They observed nature. And I'm kind of making a little distinctions between an African perspective and a European or Western perspective so that you can understand. So what the Europeans do, or Western civilization has done, is they've sought to take nature and make it within their concept. You know, in other words, and their aim and goal, what is to conquer nature. But our goal, our ancestors, that wasn't their goal. Their goal was to study nature and to line up with it. You see, there's a difference here, to line up with the nature, so now we can access the forces of nature. And so they studied these animals. They observed them over thousands of years. And then they began to see, well, these are various qualities that we can channel. And so that's why a lot of them had, because they called it polytheism. They also called it animism, the Europeans. In other words, worship of animals. That'll be like the Rams who have a ram uniform, and then and somebody saying that they're worshiping a ram. No, this is the symbol that they're wearing. So moving right along, our ancestors sought to manifest the energy and spirit of the Neteru by declaring the names and invoking their spirits. By specifically naming the Neteru, we can more effectively access their powers. And I said about the polytheism. And the object is to become forces of nature in our own right. So that's the point that I want to make. You too can become a force of nature in your own right. Wow, you know, are you bold enough to do that? Are you bold enough to claim that I can walk this world as a force of nature, you know, in my own right, and be doing it not in opposition to the creator, but in alignment with the creator. That's what I want to call you guys to today. So Neteru, the divine spirit nature. So Neteru is the essential nature out of which all things are born, the ultimate source. So this is me projecting my thoughts on this, okay? And so that's why I'm telling you, you can follow it on your shelf if it doesn't fit, but this is me based on my thought through the years. So I call the Agduad Neteru, I call it the cosmic womb of darkness, the sacred essence. She is the feminine essence out of which radiant light is born. And so she is zero, the no thing. Her symbol is water. She is pure love. She represents the essence within creator. And so how do we relate to Neteru or nature? In stillness and quietness, we allow her love to flow. So we allow the essence. And so I want to make another point here. So our ancestors, when they talked about the Agduad, they talked about it as a masculine thing. Now I'm talking about it as a feminine thing. I want to just tell you how I can justify that. Because so when we talk about something, we're talking about the idea of it. And an idea is a masculine, it's like a seed, it's a masculine function, an idea. But when we talk about the actual thing, we're not talking about the idea of it, we're talking about the essence of it. So what I'm saying is that in essence, the Agduad, the Nun, is talking about feminine energy. Everything is born of woman. So that's kind of my take on Neteru nature. And we say mother nature, right? And so anybody got any questions on that or comments or whatever, briefly?
This word neter is where the Greeks got the concept of nature.
Mm-hmm, right.
So that's where the Greeks, being influenced by our ancestors, got even the word nature.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And you could see it just comes from that, right? So we got to understand that. So my thing is, in my spiritual journey, I'm learning to relate to feminine energy. And feminine energy is a flow. And the symbol of feminine energy, as I've studied Taoist teachings, is water. Water, it represents feminine energy. Water represents emotions, feminine. So anyway, something for you to think about, reflect on, maybe at some other point, maybe we can have another conversation about it, or personally you can contact me. In fact, I think I'm gonna leave my email on there. So if anybody has any questions or you don't want to continue the dialogue, feel free to just reach out to me and we can talk about it. So that's Neteru. Okay, now we talk about the Neteru, which is the forces of nature, of which the primary nature is Ra, the creator. See, the creator emerged out of the womb, became self-existence, and then began to project an idea. That's a masculine. So the creator is a man or a masculine energy because it projects itself. So Ra, the divine mind of Neteru, that's what I call Ra, the divine mind of Neteru. Ra is a creative source energy, the supreme Neteru, the self-existent one who knows in his self-knowing. Out of his knowing, he creates all forms. He is a radiant light energy out of which three-dimensional reality emerges. This reality is a mental construct. He is the one. So for nature, I say is the zero, and the creator is the one. He is the one because he was the first to emerge out of the Agduad. He is masculine energy. He represents the idea of creation. His symbol is the sun. He is pure light. Okay, so remember, the purpose is that we must operate in the world as these natures. We must access this energy. So to become as Ra, from my perspective, is to know who you are as a divine being and to send forth your creative word to co-create your experience. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. It is to stand in power over your circumstances. It is to be a light in the world, operating as what I call a living sun. So people understand that? Is that acceptable? Okay, so, all right, so that's acceptable, I trust. Okay, so I'm gonna move on then to the phases and cycles of the creative expression of Ra. All right, so Ra, so they say, so this is what is said in the text. I come forth in the morning as Keper, shining in the noonday as Ra, closing out the evening as Atum. And so Ra, so Keper is emerging, the coming forth. Ra is shining forth in its fullness. Atum is the closing out. And then Amun, or Amun, actually is the night. It's the sun at night, shining, but being hidden, but in hibernation, waiting to come forth in the morning. And so this aspect of creation has phases or cycles. And if you follow these cycles, you have a morning, noon, evening, and night. You have spring, summer, fall, and winter. So these are all aspects of the evolving consciousness of the Creator. So Keper, Keper is the beginning action that comes forth from darkness, resurrection, and rebirth. His symbol is the morning sun and the scarab beetle, as we've already talked about that. Ra in the noonday. In the fullness of expression of an idea or action, his symbol is the sun at noontime. Atum, Ra in completion of an idea action, his symbol is the evening sun. Amen, or Amun, Ra in hibernation during the interim between creative acts, as the hidden one, the mystery of creation. His symbol is the sun hidden in the darkness, but reflected by the moon. And so then there's another aspect of Ra called Ptah. Ptah is Ra as a creative word, out of which all creation flows. And so then I want to end with, as far as talking about Ra, over the course of thousands of years, our ancestors combined Ra and Amun, Amen, and began to identify the Creator as Amen Ra. So I'm showing you how this, so I'm kind of talking about how the unfoldment or evolution of an idea emerges. And so in its complete form, it was Amen Ra. So any comment on that or questions? You want to add anything to that, Brother Imhotep?
Only that I would add that there's nothing to add. So
okay. Thank you. All right.
What are the four seasons? What are the four seasons associated with the 4 times of day?
Well, so think about Kepler, right? Coming forth, right? That's morning. So what is that? That's spring. So then Ra shining forth in its fullness at noonday. What is that? Summer. And then Ra closing out the day in the evening as Atum, what we might call fall, or we might call autumn. We might call it autumn, but and so that's the evening. And then we have winter, which is Amen, or the hidden one, reflected through night, as far as the day is night. So that make it, is that clear? So those are the parallels, because everything is, so everything, when you begin to understand that everything has a beginning, middle, end, hibernation period, and then rebirth, then you'll start living your life understanding, well, where am I at in this particular situation? Am I at the end and I'm trying to hold on to something that I can't hold on to? I got to understand, I got to let go. Just like the evening sun always goes by, you got to let it go. Are you at the beginning of something? Are you in the middle of full expression? So my New Year's is always spring. I always look at spring as my New Year's. I'm always trying to get ready to spring forward with whatever I'm going to do in spring, because I want to move in alignment with nature. And so nature begins to wake up and express itself and come forth in spring. And so that's my New Year. So that I'm just kind of showing you how you can align your actions with nature and then be moving with the flow as opposed to working against the grain. Any more comments or questions on that particular aspect of the cycles of the creative expression of Ra?
Thank you. That answered my question.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so this is Ra. This is the Neteru Ra. This is Ra, with the sun disk at the top, at the head right there. And then, also Ra is a falcon head, a lot of times. Now they have different images, but this is one of the main ones. And so if you'll notice, Heru has a falcon head, and so Heru the elder, Heru is a falcon, and Heru the younger, the son of Asar and Aset, is a falcon. Because what are they? They're sons of Ra. They're descendants of Ra. Okay, so this is Ra. So this is another form of Ra. So you'll know these when you see them. This is Ptah. Ptah. This is the image of Ptah, which is, and usually it has, and you see the beard right there. So this is the extension right there. That's Ptah. Okay, and now these are all forms of Ra. And then this is Amun or Amen Ra, which is Duran. Amen. And so they connect. So they combine Amen, Amun with Ra to form the concept of Amen Ra. That's the evolution. Okay. So now there are Neters that coexisted with Ra. In other words, they don't show where these were created, but it seemed like as Ra emerged, he emerged with certain energies, which I call coexistent with Ra, which is Ma'at and Jehudi. So this is a picture of Ma'at, and this is her with the outstretched wings, the foundation of principles upon which all creation rests, order, balance. She is love in action. She is feminine receptive energy. Her symbol is a goddess with outstretched hands and wings, along with the ostrich feather and scales, to become as Ma'at. So now how are we going to embody Ma'at? It's to be principled, balanced, and in order in the way you do things. So you can invoke that energy of Ma'at when you want to bring forth order. And then we have those guidelines based on the principles and okay, so that's Ma'at. She's coexisting with Ma'at. In the creation stories, as Ra emerged, and can people hear me okay? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. You froze for just a couple of seconds, but now you're fine.
Great. Okay, because my thing came up and said it was unstable. So, okay, thank you. So, when Ra created Earth, he said, I'm going to lay everything I create on the foundation of Ma'at. In other words, Ma'at is the ordering principle, the ordering principle upon which all creation is founded. A lot of times people think of Ma'at as being a social order, but Ma'at is not just a social order. Ma'at is the order of the whole cosmos and the universe. Everything emerges based on Ma'at. Throughout all the cosmos, there's an order and a precision and a balance that governs all of it, and that's Ma'at. So then the other emerging, coexisting, energetic, that emerged with Ra was Jehudi. And so here again, you have the feminine and masculine. So Jehudi, the Greeks call him Thoth. There he is right there with that ibis. And the divine articulation of speech and intelligence, the creator of science, the master of words, of power, Heka-U, magic. He is masculine energy. His symbol is a god with an ibis head. To become as Jehudi is to be precise in your use of language and wise in your choices. It is to be scientific in your application of spiritual principles. So if you need it to write, you need it to be precise, you might want to call on that energy of Jehudi. Now, and so Jehudi then is the word, and Ma'at is then the receptacle of the word. You see? And so so even as he emerged, there was a principle of Jehudi and the principle of Ma'at, feminine and male, always balanced. And so now, next we talk about the Neteru, who rode on the bark or boat of millions of years. So there's a bark or boat of millions. A lot of times you see Ra, you'll see him in a boat. Sometimes he's by himself, or sometimes he's with his company of deities that support him in keeping things managed. So he has a host. And so this is a picture of that because he's the son and it's representing him going from the, from the sunrise to sunset, and then going into the darkness and coming back for millions of years. So they call it the bark or boat of millions of years. And so this is representative of that process of birth, expression, close out, rest, and then rebirth, regeneration, degeneration, continuous cycle, which was the sun represents for us. So it's good for us to understand these things. So in that respect, Ra is the executive consciousness that commands our faculties through self-awareness. When you became self-aware, I'm wondering if people get the same experience I had. When I became conscious of my African self, it seemed like my world went from being upside down to right side up. In other words, it helped me to learn how to engage with people. It helped me to, wherever I went, wherever I go, because I'm now centered in my Africanness. I know who I am as an African. I can relate to anybody I come in contact with in a better way than I could. Why? Because before I was upside down, trying to orient myself in the ways of the one who would oppress me. But now that I understand how to pursue my own interests and the interests of my people, everything started fitting together and it makes sense. And so this is you coming into self-awareness. This is you reenacting the creative principle of Ra. Did that happen to anybody? Did any of you guys have similar experience when you became conscious Africans? That's what I call it.
Well, I think that this has to do with Kujichagulia. Define, name, create, and speak for ourselves. So there will be people that try to tell you, who you are and tell you about yourself. But when you study yourself, then nobody can run anything on you.
Yes. You become self-existent because you become self-aware.
Yeah, yes.
So that's the value of studying the ways of your ancestors, people. That's the value of learning your culture and walking in it. You become anchored in something that's really powerful, even beyond it. But look, if you don't know, you don't know. But once you know, you know. Can't nobody ever take that away from you.
My first reaction was anger.
Right, but then that wears off because soon you begin to realize. When I first became into the conscious community, I reacted because what you have to do first is you have to decide, well, really, you have to start setting some boundaries as to, well, what is me and what is not me, right? What am I been pursuing that's based on me? And so I was like, I told him, I don't celebrate no Christmas. I don't even want to hear it. I didn't want to, don't play no Christmas carols around me, So everybody thought I went crazy. And so, but now I'm much more relaxed about it. It's all good. Hey, you do you, I'm gonna do me, right? But at first, there's that reaction that when you first start waking up, you do have a little anger and you do kind of react like that. I think it's just a natural process, because you got to distinguish what to no longer say yes to. And then once you figure out what you're gonna say yes to, now you can say, okay, I'll say yes to this and no to that. You set
Minister, you're angry because you've been miseducated for so long.
Right. Yeah, so it's natural. It's natural. You don't beat yourself up for that. But you'll grow out of it because you'll feel so good about who you know yourself to be that that none of it can't touch you anymore. So there's nothing to be angry about anymore. You're working in your power. You're walking as Ra in the world.
Can I just also add,
Sure.
Minister, that the way a lot of times you can distinguish the Neteru from the other figures that are illustrated, they'll either have the Waz staff, which, as we're seeing Shu and Tefnut are holding, or they'll have an Ankh in their hand, one or the other, or both. And
Thank you, brother.
Yes. And with respect
No,
to,
thank you. No, I'm just saying, this is something I just learned, believe it. Go on. I'm just excited because I just learned something now. Go on.
yes, now, where I got that from was from a book by this brother's name was Nur Ankh Aman, and he wrote The African Origin of Electromagnetism. The African origin of electromagnetism, and he explains through different illustrations, ancient and modern, how these symbols, like this, the Wa staff is almost like a grounding rod, and well, you don't have the Jed pillar here, but if you would compare the Jed pillar to the to a battery pile, it's exact. And when Napoleon went in to Egypt with his 170 savants, I forget the exact number, but one of them was a man by the name of Volta, and Volta is the one who is credited for inventing the battery, and he just looked on the ancestors.
Wow.
So savants are scientists. So Napoleon went in with 100+ scientists, and they studied. One more thing.
Yes.
This isn't in the general.
And so
This thing isn't in the general Afrocentric thought, but this is what the indigenous wisdom keepers in Kemet teach, is that the statue that we call the Sphinx is really Tefnuti. It's a female. It's not a male.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, I've heard.
You were talking about the feminine aspect.
Thank you. And so and so Tefnut, if you see, she has a lion face, and that's Shu, and this is Tefnut, and so here's Shu. And so metaphysically, I see that Shu era representing our intellectual faculties, and Tefnut, moisture, representing our emotional faculties. Okay, and so so Shu was the god of air, consort of Tefnut. And his father represented truth. They gave birth to Geb and Nut, which I said before. However, Geb and Nut were inseparable, so Atum ordered Shu to separate them. And so if you notice in the Bible, it says that there was earth and that it was separated, that God ordered that the sky and that the heaven and the earth be separated. Well, that goes back to our ancient teachings where Ra ordered Shu to stand between Nut and Geb. Okay, so and so that's Shu, and there's Tefnut again, the lion face. And so then they gave birth. So Shu and Tefnut gave birth to Nut and Geb. So Nut is heaven and Geb is earth. Okay, heaven representing our intuition, and earth representing our physicality. Again, metaphysical interpretations of these concepts. And so now we come into the divine family. Okay, so when Nut and Geb came together, they produced what's called the first family, or the first humans. And so the divine family, or the real original Trinity, the Trinity is Asar, Aset, and Heru. That's the real holy couple right there. And we know what got patterned after it, right? And so I meant to bring my Ankh so that you could see that. Let me just run and get it real quick. Real quick. While you can look at the.
All right, and as Minister Amadi is coming back, we see this is the origin of the Madonna and Child. And now, you know, there's so much controversy of women actually breastfeeding in public, which is, you know, a natural function of life, and that's what this uh, statue is depicting. And in the hands of Wasir or Osar, you see, you've heard in the 23rd Psalm, "Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." There he's holding the rod and the staff. All
All
right, Minister
right.
Amadi's back. All right.
Thank you. All right. So here is the Ankh, right? I just want to show you something. Even as they've changed the Trinity, what they did is they took the womb. This is the womb. This is the feminine aspect. This is the male phallus, coming together to produce children. All right. This is the Ankh. It represents life, right? So what did they do with Christianity? They replaced the feminine with another aspect of male, because what they did is they wanted to take the feminine out of Christianity, out of the spirituality. But our African ancestors would never do that. They always had the male and female holding equal but different roles. And so the Ankh is representative of life. Feminine womb, male phallus, producing children. That's the only way you can produce. You got to have male and female. That's called the principle of gender. So this is the real Trinity: Father, Mother, and child. And just to add another thing to this, so if we really wanted to interpret Father, Son, Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit really is a feminine energy. I looked it up in the Greek, and it's a feminine. But they always talk about the Holy Spirit as He. But really, that's the feminine aspects. But so you could suppress it. You could say it ain't so. That's what I mean when I'm talking about upside down. See, they're telling you what isn't and what isn't is. And so you got to be able to put it right side up. So now you can move forward naturally. And so this is the natural Trinity right there. Okay, so just wanted to add that part in there. And so Asar, the Son of God, the Son of the Son, the example of empowered and righteous living. Okay, this is Asar. Energy is masculine. His symbol is a god with a crown and scepter. To become as Asar is to operate as a righteous and just leader, to execute with power and precision. Asar represents the divine self-image. Actually, the idea of the Christ is really the idea of Asar. Asar is the divine self-image, the crafted image, which is Asar. So I want you to just know that. So this is what we're supposed to be shooting for. This perfect idea, the idea of Asar or Asar. The wife of Asar and queen mother of Heru, who brings forth healing and restoration. She puts together pieces of that which is in ruin. You guys know the story of Asar, and gives birth to her son who will restore order. She is feminine energy. Her symbol is a goddess with a throne on her head. Now here, I'll show you where she is. Here, sometimes she has this right here, because she's actually she's an offshoot of Hathor. She sort of took the energies of Hathor, which is in part 2. If I talk about the Neterus again, I'll talk about some of the other ones like Sekhmet and Hathor. But she's the queen mother. But usually you'll see a throne on her head, because the king, the leadership. See, in Africa, and even in our own world right now, we need to understand that the man can only lead with the consent of the woman. We have to get your consent, ladies, or else we're in trouble. So a wise man knows that. He listens to his wife, and he understands that certain things got to go through his wife, because you can't replace the feminine with the masculine. And so that's why she has a throne on her head. I'll show you another one where she has a throne, but this is just another variation of a set. So to become as a set.
Before you move on, a lot of things, so different ages come in and things are replaced. So before Hathor or Heru had that crown.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
Aset took that crown, and yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Evolving. Yes, it's evolving,
Sorry.
it's changing, it's shifting, you know, but it's really the same eternal idea, just, you know, manifesting itself in different times for different reasons, you know, and so, yes, that's the thing that we got to understand. It's not fixed because it's evolving. And so another thing about Asar, remember, Aset, remember she put the pieces of her husband's body back together, and using, with the help of Jehudi, she used magic words, what we call Heka, or words of power, in order to bring all that together and to create another phallus, which had been eaten by a crocodile, so that she could birth her son Heru. Well, that's one of the versions of the story. There's a whole lot of versions, but anyway, that's one of them. So, so she also represents, you know, like a master of magic. And so you can call upon her name and her energy, you know, for that as well. And so she is feminine energy. Her symbol is a goddess with the throne. To become as a set is to pick up the pieces of that which appears to be in ruins. To pick up the pieces of that which appears to be in ruins. It is to speak healing words in the face of tragedy and disaster. It is to inspire rebirth of the divine ideas. I got to open the door and let my wife in. So give me another second here.
How's everybody doing?
Good, good.
All right, all right. He's giving us the
So to
rundown.
become as our set. All right, so a set, okay? So now we want to move to Heru. Heru, he was the heir, well, you saw him as the baby there, okay? He was the heir to the throne of his father, Asar, who contends with chaos to restore order through courage, strength, and will. Divine kingship, he represents divine kingship in the world. He is masculine energy. His symbol is the falcon head. To become as Heru is to boldly contend with the forces of chaos and to restore order through the use of the principles of Ma'at. That is to walk the world as Heru. And so out of Heru came the title hero. To be a hero in the world is derived from Heru. Okay, so now you have the divine family. Okay, now let's go with the cohorts to the divine family. All right, the cohorts are Set and Nephthys. Set, the bringer of chaos, who operates on the idea that might makes right. Did you know that Set was worshipped by the Hyksos? That he was the one that they uplifted, Set, because it's chaos, might makes right. This is the European position, might makes right. He is the brother of Asar who desires his brother's position. Masculine energy. His symbol is an ass. That's his symbol. The symbol of stubbornness, of like, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, no matter what no matter if it's right or wrong. That's Set. Okay, so to be a Set is to operate with self-interest and egotism. But the good news is this. When Set and Heru contended, Aset told her son, do not kill Set, because there's a place in the world for Set. And so we can become enlightened Set. So to become as enlightened Set is to control your ego and align your desires with the divine plan. I call that being in alignment with that's becoming enlightened Set. And so Nephthys is the sister and supporter of Aset. She is the comforter of those who mourn. She has feminine energy. Her symbol is a house. And so she has a house on top of her head. See it right there? To become as Nephthys is to support those who are hurting and mourning. And like I said, that's why I wanted Minister Imhotep to download the PDF so you can come back and look at all this stuff, later on, if so you don't have to try to remember all this. All right, so we're coming through, we're getting there. Okay, so now I kind of put it all together in this particular thing. I'm gonna briefly go through it. So to successfully navigate our way through life, we must manage the energies of our Shu intelligence, with our tef-nut emotions, and then balance our nut intuition with our geb physicality. It's all about balancing, right? Our aim is to look up to the perfect Kharast Christ idea for humanity, exemplified by Asar, the just and powerful leader. Nurtured and sustained by our set consciousness of the Queen Mother, our ultimate goal is to operate as Heru in the world. That's what we're here to do. That's what this story is telling us, to be as Heru in the world. In other words, to confront the chaos, to confront the dysfunction. Wherever you are, engage it with courage. That's being Heru, having a will to do the right thing, to operate in Ma'at. In that consciousness, we become the hero who confronts dysfunction and chaos and brings forth order and righteousness through the cultivation of courage and strength of will. In the process, we become as enlightened Set, because we will have transcended our ego and made it a servant to our soul. How you like that? Make your ego a servant to your soul. You know, that's really what it's supposed to be. You can't be, the ego is a poor master, but a wonderful servant. A wonderful servant. So now, okay, because I'm really getting to the end too, so I'm going to be able to pull this off. Okay, go with grandma. Okay, I got a 4-year-old these days, so you know how that is. So in her book, so now this I'm kind of bringing it all to a conclusion here. In her book, Let the Circle Be Unbroken, many of you have heard Marimba Ani, on pages 23 and 27, discusses or writes how our African ancestors who have been enslaved in diasporas around the world had to draw upon their African spiritual roots to survive the experience. This is what she said. In North America, they left us with nothing. They took the material aspects of our culture and prohibited the continuance of our traditions. They took away our drums. In terms of the African worldview, they attempted to isolate us from our source of spirit. In order to survive as Africans spiritually, we had to create meaning. We had to create order in the midst of chaos. That's what our enslaved ancestors had to do. All right? And so what did they do? What did we do? We made contact with a source of energy so powerful that it allowed us to withstand confrontation with the most destructive force in human history. We survived the disastrous implications of Western domination. For those of us in North America, the night sings and prayer meetings. That's what it was. See, this is why we gotta always honor our roots. I call it unconscious African spirituality. You know, it goes back to the motherland, right? So we had prayer meetings, and we sang and we engaged. It was ritualistic activity. So she goes on to say that we survived the disastrous, we survived it through the night sings and the prayer meetings, which were akin to the voodoo ceremonies in Haiti. How many of us know that it was when Haitian threw away the God of the white man and began to honor and call forth Ogun, the African god of war, that they were able to defeat not just the French, but the Spanish and the English and get their liberty. And so that was through him invoking something different, a different image, you know, and so just to finish what he was saying, so there were rituals, which we called the spirit. They were the rituals in which we called the spirits, and the spirits came. The spirits must be called in the appropriate manner or they won't appear. In more traditional African ritual, they're called the drummers, the songs, and the dances. In African diasporic ritual drama, all the familiar elements are present in a reinterpreted form. You know, in other words, unconscious African spirituality is what got us how we survived enslavement, you know, but we called it by a different name, but it was still the same thing. And so in conclusion, like our ancestors, We too must call upon the gods of our ancestors and channel their energy in our lives. Our work is to become divinities in our own right and proceed to transform the conditions of our lives and the lives of African people throughout the world. In Africa, that is called manifesting the spirit of our ancestors. They say we're manifesting it. We're manifesting the spirit of our ancestors. It is important that we embrace an African-centered perspective of the world as we tell our own story based on our own African spiritual traditions. Let us be as Ra in the world, sovereign in our self-knowingness. And let us be as Heru in the world, heroes who create the world that we want to live in. Ashe.
Ashe.
And so I end with this last image right here. And this is Heru, the falcon. This is who I am. This is who you are. This is what we can do. We can be as Heru in the world. Okay, so I think we got 2 minutes for questions. No.
Well, we got 6
We got
minutes.
about 5 minutes.
We got 6 minutes.
All right. So we'll open it up if there's any questions, comments or whatever, I always squeeze so much, I'm still learning.
No, that was.
Minister Imhotep, can you give us the name of the book again?
Oh, okay. So it's
Can you put it in there?
it's African. Oh, yeah. I guess I could. It's African origin of electromagnetism.
Electrum.
Okay. Yeah, I wrote that down. Let me just read one last thing, which is the falcon. Since we got a falcon here as an image, the falcon is a symbol for the sun and light because its rapid flight and its ability to soar into the highest regions of the air where the light abounds. The nectar Heru is represented by the falcon, and his right eye symbolizes the sun and the sun's ability, like that of God, to see all things at all times. The eye is also the organ which perceives light and represents the process of spiritual awareness. Similar attributes have been incorporated into Native American names such as Hawkeye and Eagle Eye. So that's what that's why they picked the falcon to represent Heru. And this is what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to fly above all the mess and do what we do.
This particular statue is in the very front of the temple at Edfu. So when you go to Kemet, look for the, or you can't miss it, because like when people are standing next to it, they might come to the second part of the legs. That's how big that is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Big.
Yeah.
Man, I didn't know it was that big. Thank you.
Yeah.
I knew you was going to be able to add to this. Thank you, Brother Imhotep. Appreciate it. Any questions, comments, anything? I think we have a few more minutes. Any questions, comments, please?
Well, I just wanted to say that you really did your homework on this, and you used some really good examples. You had Dr. Theophile Obenga, and I want you to know that's the definition that I use for Neteru. Dr. Theo Obenga's pharaonic period, and then you went into Anthony Browder. You got some great things in Anthony Browder, and then you explained to us the Neteru, and you went into each aspect, which is very it was very comprehensive, and then you gave us the boat of Ra and the phases of the sun, and you showed us Ra and Shu and Tef Nudi, and you explained how the land and the sky were separated, and then you gave us that divine Trinity. There's other trinities, Amen,
yes, right,
Mut, Kunsum, which is basically the same, so it's African, but, this is the one that went out into the world, Wasir, Aset, Hor, or Heru, and this is the origin of the Madonna and Child, and, it was just a great presentation, and I'm glad that it's recorded. Sister Akanke was on, and she said, great presentation. I've got to leave, but I hope it's recorded. Yes, Sister Conke is recorded. So, and then I want to make sure that everybody, I put it again in the chat, and I think some people responded saying that they could get to it. Can everybody get to the supplemental information that Minister Amadi gave us?
Oh, I see it now. I see it.
Can you repost it again? Can you repost
It says
again?
download right there, 5:21 p.m. I see it now. First, I couldn't see it, but I do
Well,
see it now.
you know, I put it in again. I put it in again. Well, let me just, hey, I'll put it in now. That's the kind of guy I am. So,
Yeah, so it's just information so that
Yeah,
you don't have to worry about if you didn't take notes, and you don't have to worry about remembering everybody.
that is so excellent to do that, because there you went through a lot. You covered a lot.
Mhm.
Well, I think everyone enjoyed and received a lot of information on the right brain and the left brain in this presentation today, this evening. And I just want to say next week, we'll be following up with just one aspect of creation, one of the natures. We'll be talking about Mott next week, presented by myself, and then along with you all. And then the following week, we'll have a sister that I went to San Francisco State with. Her name is Carol Magruder, and she's going to be talking about what she's working with, which is the campaign that's against the tobacco companies. And so she's going to be focusing on that. And then you touched on something a little bit that I think is going to be in our third week in the month, October 21st. Sister Debbie's going to be talking, bringing a wonderful presentation on the Gullah people and, the South Sea Islander people. So I know that she's been working on that, and so it's going to be a great presentation. Right now, October 28th is open, but we're working to fill that, and maybe you all might, or maybe one of you might be ready for that. All right, so is there anything that we need to be thinking about, talking about, or doing something about before we close? Is there anything, anybody want to say anything or add a comment?
Well, I see
would
that.
just
I
like
see
to
that you
say-
put. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go on. All I was going to say
I
was
would
that I see that you put my email in there. So anyone who has a question, or if you want to continue the dialogue, feel free to send me an email, and I'd love to continue the conversation. I'm sorry, sister. Please proceed.
Oh, that's okay. It was wonderful as being part of WOSE for like 38 plus years. It was just wonderful to have everything reiterated again, and just to bring things forth. And what I'm thinking now is that I need the statues to be able to again, put on the altar and to manifest them. And that was something that was kind of new for me, to manifest through the Neteru. And it was a wonderful presentation. And I've said this before, but it is wonderful to have you added to our repertoire of Minister Emoteps, Minister Makalisis, and you are one of those people. Minister Mali, it's great to have all of these wonderful minds together. And I'm just grateful and thankful. Wonderful presentation. And this is Mama Ngina, by the way. Can't show my face today.
For some reason, she wants to go through this presentation anonymously. So we'll see her next time. Anyone else? Anyone else? Don DeWay, you were talking about feeding people last time we spoke. How's that going?
Oh, it's going well. My son and I, the 17-year-old, we have a nonprofit here in East Palo Alto. It's Onyx Village Connection. And that's what we do. Our mission is to feed the hungry here in East Palo Alto and surrounding cities, and connect them with resources and compassion. So we've been establishing some pretty good relationships, some partnerships. We're now partnered with My New Red Shoes, based in Redwood Shores. So now our clients, our brothers and sisters, will be receiving free new tennis shoes as well as clothing from the Gap.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
Today we fed, let's see, we fed over 500. We delivered over 500 meals today.
And this is in East Palo Alto,
East Palo Alto.
in Nairobi.
In Nairobi, little Nairobi, yeah.
Little Nairobi.
So yeah, we had a huge meeting the other day with one of our largest donors that's looking to even bless us with even more during the pandemic. So
that is beautiful. That is beautiful. That's a beautiful story. I'm glad I asked that. That's good for us all to hear that.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That's good for.
Well,
Now, just one more thing I wanted to ask you. Your son, how is he doing in Nigeria?
In Nigeria, he's such a humble young man. He's doing pretty good. You know, he's so thankful of his new family. He's thankful that we came into his life because during coronavirus, everything was at a standstill, right? So I feel like he thought that maybe he says that we wouldn't have died of coronavirus, we would die of starvation. So if I could feed hundreds of people here, I know that I could feed one family in Nigeria. So that's the blessing in it all. That's the blessing.
Give thanks for that. Anything else? Anybody else want to make a comment? Mama Afua, you're coming in?
I was coming in, but just with a full heart. And I really appreciate all of the knowledge and wisdom, that Minister Hines shared. And to Thandiwe, our globalness is really wonderful. Yes.
Give thanks.
Thank you.
Again, we have, Kalahari Danjuma. I don't know if I'm familiar with you, but glad that you could join us today. And Brother Tyrone, glad you could make it with us today. And of course, Brother Amen, Sister Debbie, and I keep saying John G. Jackson, but he's really John Jackson. So hopefully you'll indulge me with that. I love saying that, John G. Jackson.
I can read his book. I have it.
Yeah, Man, God, and Civilization is the book I have. Yeah. All right. So we went a little bit over, but nobody can kick us off because this is our Zoom. All right. So I'm glad we can all spend some time together, and I really await that time, as Minister Amadi pointed out. Those camp meetings and those singing those spirituals and raising the spirit in each other's presence is very important too. All right, so again, next week we're going to talk about Ma'at. The following week we're going to talk about the effort against the tobacco companies, and then the following after that, on October 21st, Sister Debbie's going to be telling us about the Gullah people of the South Sea Islands, right? Right, Debbie? Would that be?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, life, prosperity, and health. Uncle Job Seneb, Nedger Ek. Light and peace to you. Live up.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Ashe.
Say.